Continuing on now with assignment number 11 from CPI 211. We left off with the hero ship being able to fire at the enemies and the enemies being able to fire at the hero ship, but when the enemy fires at the hero ship, or even if the enemy ship runs into the hero ship, nothing happens. So we need to make our hero ship get blown up when it gets hit, and then have our player lose a life each time his ship or her ship gets blown up. So to do that, we're going to modify our hero ship script that we had with the starter project. Here's the original. We're going to do just as we did with our enemy ship, where we did a save as and gave it a new name. I'm going to open up the existing hero ship script, do a save as, and then give it a new name. In my case, I called it Hero Ship Assignment. Let's take a look at this Hero Ship Assignment. We've got lots and lots and lots going on now inside this updated version of the Hero Ship. We're going to focus first just on making our hero ship blow up when it gets hit by the enemy ship or by an enemy bullet. To make this happen, we're going to borrow some of the code from our enemy ship script. You remember in the enemy ship script, we've got an array of audio clips. These are all those clips that play explosions. And we're going to make use of the same thing for our hero ship. When our hero ship gets blown up, we'll randomly select an explosion sound to play. Also, we are going to modify our on trigger enter script. If you remember the original one, it didn't even exist actually, so we're going to have to add an on trigger script now. And the on trigger script is going to work in a similar way to the one on our enemy ship did. Remember, on the enemy ship, we checked to see if the enemy ship had been hit by a hero's bullet. If it has, we played an explosion, we destroyed the bullet, and we repositioned our enemy ship up at the top of the screen. And then we also checked to see if the enemy ship had run into the hero ship, and if so, we repositioned the enemy ship up at the top of the screen again using our reset position. Now it's a little tricky here. We are going to be detecting essentially the same thing from two places. In our enemy ship script, in the on trigger enter, we're checking to see whether the enemy ship has run into the hero ship. Meanwhile, in our hero ship script, we're going to check to see whether the hero ship has run into the enemy ship. So we're detecting it both ways. It's kind of a funky way to do it, but it works well, so I'll continue to use it this way for this assignment. If we look at the enemy ship script, when it detects that it has been hit by the hero ship, the only thing it does is reposition itself, the enemy ship, back up at the top of the screen. Meanwhile, here in our modified hero ship script, if the hero ship detects that it has run into or been hit by the enemy ship, it's going to play that explosion. So in this file, we're repositioning the ship, and in this file, we're playing the explosion. How in the world are we making these detections? You'll notice that in the on trigger enter function for both the hero ship and the enemy ship scripts, we're making use of tags. In the default file that you download, these tags may or may not exist. You'll want to double check to make sure they're there. And you'll want to assign specific tags that match these strings that we're creating to the objects in the game. So let's check that before we move too much further. Here's our enemy ship, and I've got my enemy ship tagged with the string enemy ship. In your case, if you click on the drop-down list and you don't see a tag named enemy ship, you'll need to go to add tag and then simply type it in. In fact, while you're here, you can add in other tags that you will need to make this game work well. We need an enemy bullet tag that we're going to use to tag, surprisingly enough, our enemy bullet. we need a hero bullet tag, we need a hero ship tag, we need an enemy ship tag, and then we've got some other tags in here that we will probably not use that are just leftovers. So our enemy ship needs to be tagged, as I mentioned, with enemy ship. Our hero ship needs to be tagged. Currently it's not tagged with anything, so I'm going to tag it with hero ship. And I need to tag my bullets too. Now how can I do that? I don't have any out in the scene. Well, you can tag the prefabs. So I come down, select my bullet prefab, and this is going to be the hero ship bullet, so I'll select hero bullet as the tag. I'll select the enemy bullet, and it needs to be tagged enemy bullet. Those should be all of the things that we need to have tagged in order to make this work properly. Now I want to demonstrate how these multiple collision detections are working. I mentioned that we've got the enemy ship looking for and detecting the hero ship, and we've got the hero ship looking for and detecting the enemy ship. The way we've got things set up at the moment actually won't work perfectly, and I'm going to change them. And in changing them, I can try to demonstrate a bit more about how these multiple collisions work. So if I click play with what we've got now when I get hit by a bullet, I get a nice explosion. If I hit the ship, you'll hear an explosion sound, but you don't actually see the explosion happening. The reason you don't see that explosion happening has to do with how we are triggering the explosion. Let's take a look at our scripts. Here we are in the hero ship script, and here we are in the onTrigger function. What's happening now is, if our hero ship detects that it has been hit by the enemy ship, it's going to run that explosion, and we need to tell it where to run it. What's happening is that we are telling the script to run that explosion at the position of our enemy ship. The problem is, over here in our enemy ship script, we're also detecting a collision. If the enemy ship interacts or collides with the hero ship, it's going to reset its position. Do you see what's happening? The enemy ship gets repositioned up outside the top of the screen. That ends up happening first. Then our hero ship runs the explosion, and the new position for the enemy ship is now outside the screen. So to make this work, we need to take out this explode call from the hero ship detection one, come over to our enemy ship detection one, paste it here. Now the explosion is going to take place at the position not of the hero ship, but not of the enemy ship, which may be up off the top of the screen, but where the hero ship is. It's a little confusing, but let's see how this works. Now our ships come down, it fires bullets, and now if I get hit by the ship, I get an explosion right there where my hero ship is. So it's now working properly. One other thing I want to point out. On the enemy ship, when the enemy ship collides with either a bullet from the hero ship or the hero ship itself, it's resetting the position of itself back up to the top of the screen. But in the hero ship script, when we're doing that same detection, you'll notice that we're not repositioning the hero ship. You could do this if you wanted to in your own game. If you choose to do it, it has a few challenges. The hero ship currently has an update function that is repositioning the hero ship based upon where the mouse is on the screen. A challenge in running a reset position to move the hero ship, let's say back to the center of the screen when it gets hit by something, is that this update function is constantly running. So even if we were to call a reset position here to move our hero ship back to the center of the screen after it gets hit, that repositioning will immediately be overridden by wherever the mouse is on the screen. So it happens so fast you won't actually see the hero ship get repositioned. So for the assignment, I've simply not had that function working for our hero ship. It gets hit by the enemy ship and a nice explosion occurs, but the hero ship continues to exist in the same place on the screen as it was when it got hit. Well, we now have the bulk of the requirements of assignment number 11 finished, but we still have some work to do. Let's now go in and set up and show the number of lives the player has and decrease those lives each time the player ship gets hit. To do this, let's borrow some code and modify it and from an earlier assignment, and let's also borrow a graphic that we used in an earlier assignment and make use of it in this assignment. I'm talking about the heart texture that we used in an earlier assignment. I've forgotten which one now, probably assignment number 9, I think. So what you can do is go back into the files from that week. If I come up to the Blackboard site and go to Content, and come down to week 9, you'll see there's that heart image. So we'll use that same heart image to show how many lives the player has left. Now in week 9 we also had some code that we used to display those lives, but in that case we were working with a countdown clock, if you remember, and when the countdown clock reached 0, then we took away one of the lives of the player. We're going to do something actually much simpler in this game. A simpler piece of scripting. So let's set that up next. Like we did in an earlier assignment, I'm going to create an empty game object that's going to act as a sort of game manager. And we'll use that empty game object that will have nothing but a script attached to it in order to track how many lives the player has left and then also to keep track of the score. So I'm going to go up to Game Object, Create Other, and I'll rename that object Game Manager. Then I'm going to need to create a script that's going to show the lives and keep track of the score. I'll create a new script and I'm going to call mine Lives Keeper. Inside that script, to start with, let's just focus on getting the hearts to show up on the screen. So I'm going to have a public variable that's going to point to the 2D texture, which is the heart itself. And I'm going to have a public lives integer set to 3. Then the only other thing for now I'm going to have is an onGUI function. And this is copied directly off of the assignment 9 files. All I'm doing is I'm going to have a for loop that counts up to the number of lives, which is going to be 3. And then it's going to draw the heart on the screen by passing the position of the heart and the size of the heart that we want to display. We also are going to put in an if statement in our onGUI that's going to check whether or not the player has any lives left. If they don't, if they reach a point where they've been killed 3 times in the game, then we're simply going to reload the current level. This assignment is only going to have one level, which is the game itself. So I'm going to use application load level and then pass in the number of the scene. If there's only one scene, that number is going to be 0. So let's save that. Come back into Unity. Take that Lives Keeper script and attach it to the empty Game Manager object. Then if I look at the inspector, you'll see that I need to let it know which texture to use to display on the screen. I'm going to use the heart texture. To make the heart texture show up appropriately, when you bring it into Unity, you'll need to make sure to set the texture type to GUI. So I'll simply drag that heart texture and drop it over on top of there. Now if I hit play, you'll see that those 3 hearts appear up at the top of the screen. Nothing happens though when I get hit. I don't lose any lives yet. So that's what we need to do next, is write some code in order to reduce the number of lives each time our ship gets hit. To make this work, I want to draw your memory back to an earlier lesson in class where we talked about how to set up scripts so that one game object can communicate with another game object. You'll remember that it's possible for a game object to call a function that is sitting on a script that's attached to another function, to another game object. It's also possible to set variables that are attached to another game object inside a script, and that's what we're going to do. So let's go back into our hero ship and modify the hero ship script. It's going to make sense because we want to have it so that if this ship gets hit, its player is going to lose a life. So we'll do the scripting here inside our hero ship script. To make this work, I'm going to create a couple of new variables for our hero ship script. One is going to be a script that points to a game object, and it's going to set up the link that allows us to communicate between the hero ship script and our game manager script that's keeping track of the lives. So that's what this will do. It will point to that game manager script. I'm also going to set up a private variable. This variable is going to track how many lives are left in our game. And it's going to be sort of a local variable that basically is going to keep dropping down each time our hero ship is collided or hit by a bullet or the enemy ship. Okay, so I've got those two set up. Then I'll come down into my onTriggerEnter script, and here's where I can actually update the lives and cause the number of lives to drop in terms of what we see on screen. First, what I'm going to do is I'm going to check, and if the hero ship gets hit by an enemy bullet or the hero ship gets hit by the enemy ship, then I'm going to decrease by 1 the number of lives that are left, and that's this private variable that's within this script. Then I'm going to communicate out to that game manager object, and here's how I can do that. This is the game manager object. You remember we defined it up here, and then we're going to point to it. Then I'm going to check, and I'm going to grab a component that's attached to that game manager object, and I'm going to pass the name of that component. And this is sort of a new way to list the name of that component, and this is how you list the name of a script. So I'm going to look for the lives keeper script, which is attached to our game manager object. Here it is, lives keeper script, right there. Then, within that lives keeper script, there is a public variable called lives. If you remember, here it is, which we set to 3. And I'm going to set that variable equal to whatever the value of this local version of that lives variable is. And if we look back at that game manager object in the lives keeper script, you remember it's got this onGUI function which is constantly drawing and redrawing the number of hearts that are on screen. And to draw them, it counts how many lives are left, and it draws that many hearts. So if we're over in our hero ship and we're decreasing the number of lives, then over here on this lives keeper one, there'll be 1 fewer lives here, which means we'll draw 1 fewer heart. And then we're also checking to see if this reaches 0, then we'll reload the game. So that lets me do that check for the enemy bullet. I need to do the same thing for the enemy ship. Decrease the number of lives, and then send a message out to the lives object lives keeper script to set its lives variable equal to whatever the value is of our local lives variable. Save all of that. Come back into here and try it out. Now if our player gets hit, oh, we should be dropping, but we're not. Let's check what the error is. Oh, if you look at our hero ship, we've modified our hero ship script, right? And the way we modified it is that we added a new public variable called lives object, and we forgot to point to it. So let's point to it. Save that, and we'll try again. Now when we get hit, we lose a life, get hit again, lose another life. If we get hit a third time, then the level starts over again with 3 lives. Alright, so that's all working appropriately. We're so close to being done. The very last step is to now display the score on the screen. And of course we need to set up a real simple system for adding points to the score when we hit the enemy ship. So let's do that next. To get this scoring system to work and to be displayed, we're going to go back into our lives keeper script, and we're going to create a couple of more variables. The first one is going to be a variable that points to a GUI text object. Again, drawing your memory back to an earlier assignment, into, in fact, assignment number 9 again, where we created a GUI text object and we used it to display a countdown on the screen. This time we're going to create a GUI text object and use it to display the points. Why I named it lives, I don't know, but I did. It's actually going to be points that we're showing. In order to keep track of the points, we're going to have another variable which I'm going to call score, and I'm going to set it to 0, so that when the game starts, the player has no points. Then I'm going to have a start function on our lives keeper script, and what it's going to do is when the game starts, it's going to display the current score, which is 0. So it's going to grab that GUI text object, set its text equal to score plus whatever the score is, which is 0. Then I'm going to add in a function that's going to get called from another object, just like we did a minute ago. This function I'll call update score. And this function is going to receive some score from whichever object calls it. Now I could just set this in as 10, so that no matter what happens when the player gets some points, the player will get 10 points. In this case, I'm not hard coding in the number of points. I'm letting this function receive some number that will be the points. That will allow you, if you are building a fuller game, to say give a couple points for one kind of enemy hit and a few more points for another kind of enemy hit, if, for example, you had lots and lots of different enemy ship types. Then within this function, I'm going to take whatever the current score value is and then add this past score to it. And then I'm going to update the GUI text to reflect what the new score is. So how are we going to call this update score function? Well, we'll do that using object-to-object communication like we've done in the past. So let's think for a minute about how this should work. Who is it that we want to talk to our game manager in order to update that score? Well, if you think about it, we want to know when the player has fired a bullet that hits the enemy ship, and this last piece is key. We want to know when a hero bullet hits the enemy ship. So we're going to go in and modify our enemy ship script. To do that, I'm going to add another public variable, and this is going to again point to that game manager object so that we can communicate directly with the game manager object from within our enemy ship script. Then I'm going to come down to my onTrigger enter function, and I want to know when the hero bullet is hitting the enemy ship, and when that happens I want to add points. So here we go. Inside the if statement that detects when the enemy ship has been hit by a hero's bullet, I'm going to say hello to the game manager object. I'm going to look for a component on it which is that script called liveskeeper, and then I'm going to send a message to that script, which is to update score. That's a function, you'll remember, that we put inside this script, and I'm going to pass it a value of 10. So this line is going to communicate with this function here. It's going to get called and it's going to be passed 10. So I can save that. It's not going to work yet, and do you know why? If I look at my Game Manager script, now it's asking me to send it or to point it to a GUI text object, which we haven't created yet. So we need to create one now in order for this to work. So I'm going to go up to Game Object, Create Other, and choose GUI Text. And I'll give it a name. Maybe I'll call it Score Text. I'm just going to use the built-in font. I might raise the font size to say 30. And I might want to position it around so that I can see it on the screen. Right now it's sitting right here in the middle. And in fact, if I want to see correctly where it's really going to appear on the screen, it'll help if I expand out my screen a little bit. There we go. To get a better idea of where this is going to appear. So you may or may not be able to see this on the recording. I think you should be able to see it. Then I'm going to play around with the transform to reposition that GUI text so that it appears in the upper right hand corner. That looks pretty good there. Shows up right in there. And I can play with it a little bit to imagine what it's going to look like. Let's say they've got a score of 100. I want to make sure that's going to appear. So maybe I'll go 0.85. Well, that still looks good at 0.9. Maybe for the X I'll go 0.8 to move it over a little bit. So that seems to be pretty good. Now I need to come back again to my Game Manager, and I need to point to the score text GUI text object, like so. Now when I hit play, you'll see the score is 0. If I fire on it, it should be showing me some new points, but it's not updating the score yet. So why is that? Well, again, we've modified our our scripts in our enemy ship. And if I look at the enemy ship script, let me shrink this back down again so we can see everything. If I look back to the enemy ship script that I've now updated, you'll remember that I need to let it know where the lives object is. So I grab it and pull it over there and hit play. And now when I fire on the ship, then I get the points updating. And that is everything that you need to do for assignment number 11. It's quite a lot of steps, but if you carefully walk through this video and remember what we worked on as we went through this in class, you should be in good shape. Don't forget to save it out as a Windows file and include the data folder that goes with it. Good luck and have fun, and try modifying this even more. There's lots more you can do to make this game better. Go for it.